So with regard to your product, you caught my eye. I think I was telling you at the convention because I had this truck that was built in 2015 from an outfitter out of New Jersey. They had digital menu boards, and it was candidly one of the things I was most excited about. And keep in mind, it was 10 years ago, but it was maybe the most disappointing feature of my truck. And then what you told me about was really impressive. So I want people to know how things have changed over the past 10 years. So 2015, I don't know if what I had was the newest cutting edge, but I just had a traditional LCD monitor, and it looked really cool. And it was in a glass case inside my truck, so you could see it from the outside. And it's probably like a 40-something inch screen. And immediately I realized that like in sunny daylight, you couldn't see it, and it was pretty much useless, which I did not know till I had it. And I had no way of, sometimes you learn things the hard way. Like it sounded like a great idea, and I had never had an outdoor television situation, and it makes perfect sense once you see it. But then secondarily, the other big problem, which I think your technology also addresses, is that within like, I'd say less than a year of using it, and I used that truck for 8 or 9 years, so it got a lot of use without this digital menu afterwards. It started developing black splotches from like overheating. So even when it was visible, you wouldn't be able to see like 30% of it, and it looked terrible. Instead of being like a cool high-tech feature, it was just awful. And I think your technology addresses both of those things quite effectively. So I want to give you the chance to just speak about that.
Yeah, and we're very happy to talk about it. I think if you don't mind, you mentioned you were excited about getting digital signage. And I think that's a really good place to start with this because it'll resonate with what we did with our tech. But I understand that your experience, you tried to implement it, may not have worked out. But can you speak a minute about why you were excited to have digital signage?
Yeah,
or that
of course.
On your
So I thought it was something that would visually set me apart. There's also a consistency factor. Like I did most of the shifts on my truck, but if for some reason I wasn't, you have a lot of skills you need on a truck, not that take extensive training necessarily, but like handwriting is another one. So if someone needs to make a change and they're writing illegibly, like it's hard to find someone who can drive a large vehicle and can cook and can be friendly with customers and has great penmanship, right? Like they're out there, but so it takes a variable out of play for consistency. And then the other thing, and I don't know that you guys deal with the software side at all, but I'd be interested in hearing if you have recommended partners, even if you don't. So I was excited about the idea of being able to just 86 a menu item in real time from the digital screen. And my experience, I won't reference the company I worked with just because it's 10 years ago and they might have changed and they might be better, but there's this little like hard drive underneath my counter, and it was on and it was connected to the monitor, and it had Bluetooth technology. And what I was really hoping for was like a way to mirror my external menu inside the truck so I could see it in real time. So that way, if I had like an iPad that was reflecting what my customers would see, I'd be able to, from inside the truck in my mind, be able to just quickly remove something if it was out, which would be tremendously helpful because when you're out of something, which happens, people will ask for it until they can't see it as an option anymore. But the reality of the situation was I'd have to like get out and go stand in front of my truck by the serving shelf and like find the exact like sweet spot where the Bluetooth mouse worked and like very painstakingly like move it and then erase things. And it was a much more time consuming process than it would have been to just like take a piece of tape or an eraser and cover something up.
Yes.
And again, it was 2015 and things have changed quite a lot in 10 years, I'm quite sure. But that user experience wasn't great. The software company was, I think if I remember correctly, there was like a flash drive and you could just like upload your document, and that part was like pretty straightforward. So you could have whatever PDF you design could be up there. But then the real-time changes within that software were a little different because you could also make your menu just from this hard drive, but it all had to be done through this Bluetooth connection. It was quite tedious and it was very unreliable. So anything that can be done to address that from a food truck operator standpoint makes the digital technology side much more functional aside from display readability. So that's why I was excited.
Awesome. And what I would say is we talk to a lot of food truck owners who today have very similar experiences and similar desires to what you talked about. I think the difference is what you were doing 10 to 15 years ago is, even though time has passed, it's really just the number of people now that have shared that same experience is growing every day.
Sure.
You were more at the forefront of the turn of the industry. And while tech has really advanced since then, it really hasn't for food truck owners. People are still erasing chalkboards, relying on the one, employee who may be good at calligraphy to do some kind of work there. But more importantly, you share a lot of commonality in the sense that you were trying to accelerate your business. You weren't just looking to put a new menu up. You were looking for a tool that was going to take your food truck. You said you had one and then you had a second. You're just trying to accelerate your exposure, get your food to more people. And that's ultimately what the goal is here. So the good news is it is a common experience. The tough part was, how do you find a solution? Because everybody is still struggling with very, very similar points of what you're talking about, both from a visibility standpoint, functionality, and the day-to-day implementation. So I'll kind of segment out where SVD comes into play, because as I alluded to before, we have large format RLCD technology. It's a reflective LCD, which is similar to a TV or a computer monitor that most people are used to seeing, with one big difference. There is no fundamental backlight that shines through the LCD to your eyes. We use reflective materials. And when we remove a light generating component, that means that our display doesn't have to outshine the sun, doesn't have to outshine other types of light sources that compete for your eye's attention. Instead, we're repurposing the same sunlight that's entering your eyes, only giving it our image on the display to come right to you. And in that sense, the light doesn't interfere anymore. It actually constructively helps to get to your eyes. You can actually see the display in full brightness. Further, and this was something we heard from a lot of food truck owners specifically, a lot of their customers have polarized sunglasses on because they're in bright environments.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Our LCD technology, unlike even some of the nicest OLED TVs that are out there, are visible with polarized sunglasses on. So it would also be a shame if you had a display that was bright enough, let's say, to be brighter than the brightest environment, only to have that cut down by somebody's sunglasses, something you don't get to control at all.
Right.
So that's it was one little change that created quite a bit of changes and effects in the chain of how do we get images to people to see them. So we have perfect sunlight visibility with our LCD. We made them large format, which is much bigger than like a 5-inch. We're at 32, 43 inches. And so we started with that.
Right. Great size for a food truck menu.
It is. It's perfect. Some outdoor signage, you've probably seen billboards. There's a lot of digital billboards on highways now that are much, much bigger than that. So in the digital signage world, we're on the smaller end of the spectrum, which is okay. But it does qualify as outdoor signage. So we started with that, and we were looking for different applications where, how do we have somebody in a bright environment that doesn't need an awning or some shade so they can actually read this? And we have several that are somewhat unique in of themselves. Think of like a ski resort. There's a lot of reflection and sunlight coming off of the snow, making it hard to read digital signage. Well, if there's an event that happens on the slopes, you want to be able to communicate to people pretty quickly.
Sure.
So very different than a food truck.
Right.
But
I was wondering what other applications you use this for, but yeah.
Yes, there are some. And the reason I bring it up is, as you start to think about how this could benefit not only the business owner, but the consumer or the customer, you start to realize how much of a no-brainer it becomes. And so as we started talking about food truck digital menu boards, oh my gosh, a menu that people can read, that is portable, low power, and can go with the business wherever it goes, is an absolute no-brainer. We put our tech in front of Linus Tech Tips, which is a very, very well-known influencer. And he said, the minute he saw the digital menu for food trucks, he said it was almost as if the two were created at the same time. It makes that much sense.
Yeah, they're a good fit, I think, for one another. So I'm talking, and I will say, like, I still talk to some food truck fabricators who build them, and their advice is like, don't go with the digital menu board for the reason that I mentioned. I just don't think they necessarily know that there's an option like you guys. And
And you're exactly
I
right.
saw you in Las Vegas. Yeah, I had no idea.
Right.
So this is exciting.
So we solved the first problem. We solved the visibility problem. However, that doesn't necessarily justify food truck business owners' money or investment in the technology. So we then spent time improving the technology, and I'll talk about one function that we added, but also we had to build around the display specific for food truck owners. We needed, the panel itself doesn't warrant necessarily a couple $1,000s and how cool it is. It's got to be purposed for
Right.
the owner. For example, somebody who bought a box store TV said that they were driving around and a blender fell off the back of their truck and smashed the TV.
I believe it. Yeah, I will say
I'm sure it happens.
My first display broke. I just popped a cheap television in, and I used it at night sometimes, and I made it work. But yeah, it's a hot environment. It was like half wedged behind my refrigerator, so it was difficult to access. So you're exactly right. Things fall all the time in food trucks. I can attest to that. Like I've had cheese sauce bombs go off because someone didn't like bungee cord the refrigerator, and everything gets covered. You would think it would like be somewhat contained, but it's floor to ceiling, all like 20 foot of the truck. Just cheese sauce everywhere. So that includes a display if it's not secure.
I believe it. If you give my kids a tablespoon of flour, you will be surprised at how far that will go.
Yeah, and we're talking like restaurant quantities, right? We're talking about like 6 quarts of cheese sauce or something like that.
It's, oh my God. I just, so take that in case. If we didn't take the proper steps to protect the display, the RLCD could function similar. If you adjust the panel itself, you throw a blender at it, it might not survive.
Impressive.
So our company, with the backing in the 40 plus years of being in both the LCD and display industries, had capability to protect the RLCD in ways. We have manufacturing capabilities to purpose the RLCD into a housing and into an end product that made sense for food truck owners. And our approach, our strategy was, we natively don't want to just tell people how to run their business. We want to hear from them. We talk to hundreds of owners individually. What do you do? What don't you do? That's how you hear the blender stories or the cheese stories. And we think to ourselves, how, and we come back to our engineers and we say, how do we help mitigate the risk, mitigate the damage, but give them functionality? Functionality like you mentioned with the Bluetooth or a sweet spot or most users. So the tech today, anybody that has an iPhone knows how advanced tech can be.
Of course.
We can do all kinds of things with displays. We can make them wireless. We can make them call your grandma for you. We can do all kinds of things. But if the person using it either doesn't know or isn't educated on how to do that, then they won't do it. So we had to make something simple enough to use every day, but functional enough to be worth the value there.
Sure. And the kind of I was talking about being able to make are often like in the middle of service, which just means like simple from another perspective, right? Because you don't have a lot of time if you've got 20 or 30 people in line and you want to communicate to all of them. A simple way to edit that display in real time is tremendously valuable. So,
and that's the benefit of digital signage. So there are several layers to food truck owners who traditionally have not had digital signage options for limitations that you were talking about before, who now are in a realm where digital signage becomes a possibility. And they're learning things like that. How can I 86 an item right away? And you absolutely can do that. There's many ways to do it with our technology because our technology functions like a digital sign would. It just happens to do it in an environment that other digital signs don't work very well, if that is a way to put it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there might even be an app that I don't know about, like to just edit your menu from your phone, which would be really simple.
We are absolutely working on that right now. But there even something as simple as hooking your laptop up with PowerPoint. Some people are very comfortable doing that. They feel comfortable designing within PowerPoint and putting their menu in there. And the display can handle that. It's there to be able to service the need of the business owner, but also, and this is the best part of digital signage, be able to help them grow creatively. So if they start with a menu and maybe they start with a video of them producing the food, over time, that same sign can show them QR codes to the website or the next locations. The digital signage can grow with your skills and your business.
Sure.
That's key, because the wrapping around your food truck can't necessarily do that.
Right.
You have to go get a different wrap.
Being
Or if you have, right? Yeah.
variable pricing too, as another thing I was excited about just hearing you say this. 'Cause a lot of places in the food truck world will want to charge a fee, and I get in my course into like whether you should pay that fee or not, and there's a lot of debate. But let's say you've decided to pay a fee, and they want like 20% of your sales. It's a huge number in an industry with thin margins, and like one way to do that, whether or not I recommend it, is to just raise your prices, and that might create price sensitivity, of course, with customers. If you're serving the same customers you see all the time, that's a whole other conversation. But if you're in that situation and you want to raise your prices, if you've got a digital menu board, you can do that pretty easily. Or I would sometimes have specific catering gigs with a limited or different menu, and you can swap it out more easily. So all pretty exciting stuff if the technology
Absolutely.
works for the consumer. Yeah. And
It does. So you can even let's take that one type of use case application and run it. So with digital signage and with our menu board, it can be as simple as re-entering in something into PowerPoint, where you just create a new PowerPoint, or you do it in real time. You just edit that and re-push it to the display. Can be done.
Sure.
Generally not too much time, or definitely about the same time as erasing and rewriting something. All the way through, we're talking with the point of sale software creators and saying, okay, you just had your credit card transaction that showed it ate up your last little bit of barbecue pork. We know your inventory's out. The menu updates automatically. So you don't even think about it in real time. That's what I'm talking about in terms of efficiency and functionality that people can have, that can happen behind the scenes that people don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
I did a talk. Yep, I did a talk at the Food Truck Expo, which we thought was a very valuable resource for food truck business owners. Obviously, we met there, so that's a good place.
I went there I want to like participate on your end of things for the next one, and I think I do. It was a good experience for me, and it's in my home state of New Jersey, the next one. So
yes. So I talk about there are 3 phases to the cycle of the food truck owner. You have your preparation phase, you have your execution phase, and then your tear down and kind of debriefing phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
Preparation, cooks, mise en place, get everything chopped, get everything set up, and that takes however much time it takes. Your execution phase is what I call the most important, because it's the only phase where you really make money. It's the one where you're transacting and you're going. So anything that detracts from that takes money out of your pocket. And that's where digital signage can help accelerate business. I had some stats that talk about it. And then obviously in the debrief, I'm not saying that anything is less important, because when you tear down, you can also say, can we do that better? Something went out, how can we improve that so we make that execution phase run even better the next time? But that's where a lot of the excitement that you talked about in the beginning, I think, was honing right in on that execution part, because it's so critical. You could spend a couple hours designing a menu and be excited about that. But like you said, it's when I'm in the middle of it, when I'm in the middle of a service and I need to make a change and I don't have the extra time to just do it. I need something. That's huge for people. So to kind of tie it back in, we listened to a lot of those owners, and we created a product. When we say it's designed specifically for food truck owners, that product really is. You could go put it on the side of a building and use it for something else, but it's really meant in so many ways for the food truck industry, truck, trailer, however you want to purpose it.
Yeah. So if someone's interested in your product, how does it work from the build out? Because you don't build the food trucks. They would just order from you, and then whoever is manufacturing their truck, assuming they're not doing it themselves, would the manufacturer get specific instructions from you, or they would just kind of be on their own to place it and figure it out? How involved are you in the build out side once someone?
So that's a great question. Right now, our solution is an off the shelf, meaning that you can buy it from our website, and whether you install it or the person building your food truck can install it, one of several ways. So it really was meant because a lot of the food truck owners we talked to initially already owned a truck and weren't necessarily interested in retrofitting or recessing part of the truck. They wanted something they could just mount and take down. So we created a proprietary mounting system that is a 2-piece. one part fits on the side of the truck and the other part goes on the back of the display. So you can just hook it in and take it out at the end of service. It's super convenient. There's no bolting every time you do it. It literally is, you set it, it's in there, and then you take it off when you're done.
And then you have to power it somehow. While is it a plug or a battery or a
standard plug? We put weatherproof connections on them, but it's a standard 12 volt. It only consumes about 25 watts total, so it won't overtax a generator. Right, that's less than most TVs.
Power. Yeah.
Yes,
right. I did read that.
So
if you were if you had a truck and you didn't want to retrofit, like it's as simple as running an extension cord. But if you wanted to, you could also drill through your truck and hide the wires.
You can.
Yeah.
So on the back of the display is also standard VESA mounting, which comes on the back of a TV or a computer monitor. And when we talk to people who are going to retrofit or build out the trailer, they can design around that so that if they do have a recess housing, they just put the standard VESA bolts in there and it would mount directly into the truck.
Yeah. And then if someone's building a new truck, when they buy your product off the shelf, there'd be like instructions about like the recess size if that's what they want to do. So
that's exactly right.
That makes perfect sense.
Some people want to bury the cables, or they want them. A lot of people like to have their laptop in the truck at a little station. And they want the cables not to be showing on the outside of the truck. Totally fine. So they just put holes in the trailer, and then when they put it behind the mounting, like people would do with their TV on the wall. Right.
Yeah.
Very simple.
The idea of having the laptop on the inside is that screen mirroring element I was talking about, right? If you have PowerPoint, my only like food trucks get pretty greasy, and then like I don't know that I want my like French fry hands typing on my keyboard, so I might just recommend that someone buy like an inexpensive Chromebook or something like that if that's the direction they're going, and not necessarily use their main computer.
Well, interestingly, and I think the three of us qualify in one of the two categories here. There are a lot of people who like having the laptop wired, but let's say we stuck with a PowerPoint solution, right? The younger generation wants to cast. So they'll put in a Chromecast or a Fire Stick, and they'll use the same exact platform, just cast to the device. But they can do that from their phone, which they feel comfortable with. And therefore, it does kind of eliminate either the size of the laptop or having to touch too much.
Probably a little easier to keep your phone clean, I would say, because I mean, I only know my trucks, but I had just one deep fryer, and we only did fries in the deep fryer, and the level of grease, if you've not worked around a deep fryer before, and also trucks get really hot, right? So you won't want to keep your computer too close to the grill, obviously. But if you're casting, you keep it in the cab up front and close that door. You can still make a change quickly and not have to worry about necessarily ruining your electronics. So I think in 2015, I don't think casting was really a thing, or if it was, I didn't know how to do it, but now we can all do it pretty easily, just from any iPhone. So
when it comes to the engineering of our displays, we actually have put in an HDMI port next to a USB so that the USB will power your casting device if that's what you want. Those are the types of solutions that we'll implement outside of the RLCD to make it work for food truck owners.
That makes sense.
One very interesting thing that I think our type of conversation will help bring to the forefront are different things that food truck owners both want and need. You touched on it in a little bit in terms of just how much functionality do I want in the middle of service? If the display had batteries, would that make it easier or somehow more functional for the user? What about how smart the display is? We can make the display a smart display by putting a computer in it, and then you can upload images. You can even do it from your computer at home, send it to the cloud, and then have the display. All of that functionality exists, but because the topic of digital signage is so new to the food truck industry, a lot of people aren't even aware that they could have that as an option, let alone use it. So having our types of conversations help everybody identify where are we at today. Maybe I don't want that today, but once I get comfortable with it, I'll take it in 5 years. I'll take it in a couple of years.
Yeah, there are a wide range of ages among food truck operators, and there might be. I'm 44. And my dad worked for IBM for 40 years. So I kind of grew up on the forefront of technology. We had a 1981 IBM computer born the same year, and we kept it till 1996, and it took up like an entire closet. But I remember we had internet access in the 80s, and it was prodigy, and my dad brought home this like prototype book that was basically a Kindle, but it was called a soft book. And I was probably 15, and he was telling me about how like someday you're gonna like be able to like read newspapers on it, and that sounds so far fetched. So I've really like, I'm not a big tech guy, but I've had a front row seat to like how things change. And I know something about it. I'm not incompetent in that area either, but I know a lot of people just like my age who didn't grow up with computers and maybe didn't have one till they were in college. So I'm kind of right in that in between era between the digital and the analog. They're not as comfortable, and certainly people 10 years older than me who might be operating a food truck probably are not very comfortable, that don't know what casting is. So there's an educative component.
Right.
It's really not that difficult. Like I think of my parents again. My dad is 80, and they still have cable. And to me, like I don't know why anyone would have cable, because you could just stream, and I have a Roku.
Right.
It doesn't like make sense. Right. We're not speaking the same language.
Right.
And yeah, but this is interesting to be thinking about all of that application to the food truck.
Right.
Years ago, that was off my radar, but.
I often try to make the analogy that when LCDs became the flat panel and we were getting away from, even we had the large screen TVs, but now we're going off the tube stuff. And yep. I think each of us can remember trying to teach our parents how to use the remote, the new remote. And that became a big deal. We're in a similar situation with this, not because people are incapable, but they just haven't had this before. And one thing that is going to be important for food truck owners specifically is how do they connect with their customers? Mm-hmm. Sometimes their customers are going to be a little more tech savvy than what that food truck owner may be used to seeing. And especially when it comes to digital signage, digital anything, your average consumer today under the age of 21 is used to a screen that they can touch. They've grown up with it. They've seen it. They've seen more touch-capable devices than tube TVs. Mm-hmm. My own kid touches our TV thinking it'll work like that. And how does that translate to food truck owners? Well, if they see digital signage, they may be starting to think about point of sale interaction. Not that the owner wants to have a disconnect with that person, but you're seeing it at fast food restaurants quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So that's also another capability we could even put into Sun Vision Displays signage. But that one is, it's an interesting one because it adds cost. It definitely adds functionality, but how much does the consumer, the end customer, want it so much so that the food truck owner will invest in it? These are really good decisions and conversations to be having, just because, it's where the direction of the whole industry is going. But
touch screen technology, you could potentially have a one-person operation with a food truck much more easily. I know some people are one-person operations anyway, but there's some health department issues depending on your county. Sometimes they don't like you handling money with the same hands that you're cooking, so you by definition need two people to be compliant, unless you had a touch screen like you're referring to. Potentially you could be fully compliant with just one customer, which is a huge labor expense, because in our industry it's labor and food costs that have to be controlled if you're going to make money. So that's a really interesting point. I do wonder, because I've been in a number of fast food places, especially in foreign countries. I've noticed they have these touchscreen systems and you order that way, but it's all climate controlled. And if you're at a very hot food truck event outdoors, 95 degrees or whatever it might be, not so much the ability of the equipment to withstand the heat, but I've noticed like even my credit terminal, I used Clover towards the end, and it was a great little handheld device, but if someone like left it on the serving shelf, it would get like hot enough almost to like burn the next person to touch it, and use like a shady canopy or something, which could be done if you're going to have these be touch interface potentially on a hot day, not for visibility, but just for ease of use with the tactile interface.
Absolutely. And you bring up a very interesting point here, and you had touched on it earlier with the TV when you said it got those hot spots on it. There are challenges to a backlit LCD that the RLCD actually manages very differently. It's the same as, that's called solar load. When the sunlight or ambient light hits a device and that light is absorbed, it heats up. Sometimes the internal components of a device that's computing will generate their own heat. And so that just adds to the whole system. Think about putting your phone out on a hot day or a bright day. It doesn't have to be hot. It can just be bright. And so the RLCD actually reflects that energy. It doesn't absorb nearly as much as what a backlit device would. And so what we're finding is, one, we have not had any burnout in our testing. We've had testing in high bright environments, high humid environments. And the RLCD has shown to have longevity, even more so. Your average outdoor digital sign has a lifespan of 2 years, maybe 3.
Mhm.
Lives as long as a possum, basically.
Right.
Which is not very much. Ours have gone 7 to 8 years without even batting an eye.
That's great.
So that's a huge benefit. I can tell you personally, I've been out on 95-degree days for 8-hour days in a golf setting. Golf is another application that could use remote portable digital signage.
Mhm.
And you really don't golf in poor weather unless you're in Scotland.
Right.
So we found that after 7, 8 hours, I could physically touch our display at the surface without hurting myself, while
Just
the computing laptops.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yes, my phone was shutting down. The gaming laptops.
I had my iPhone overheat on a hot day. Yeah.
Yes. Now we do have climate control built in the event that the internal temperature does reach a certain temperature for some reason. We always want to have a fail-safe there. But an RLCD just has propensity to push that energy away from it so much better. And that's what allows us to be so much thinner. If you go to a fast food chain, I won't use too many, but they have these massive, they're beautiful digital menus when you come in, and they're about 9 inches thick. 6 inches of that is the cooling mechanism alone, because of the water cooling and the fans that have to happen, because that's like a furnace. They're trying to outshine the sun, get that energy to you, but not get so hot that they burn out the image quality.
Yeah.
And it's a very delicate balance. It has a very high energy cost, and it basically doesn't address the fundamental problem. Whereas ours just says, why fight that coming in? We're going to just repurpose it back to you.
This you're just reminding me of, like, in my brick and mortar days too. I did a lot of local sourcings with farms and organic farms. I know something about that world, and I've always thought about, like, the big CAFO commercial feeding operations that have environmental problems. It's really fighting nature. And these other farmers, I see they're working with nature in harmony, and the product ends up being superior. And it's better for the planet. And it sounds like there's a similar conversation to be had with your technology, which is interesting. Maybe that's more of an overarching theme, that you're not gonna beat nature. And if you find a way to work with it, we're all gonna be better off. But as far as
absolutely
thinner displays, that means lighter weight, right? And you mentioned that some people take it in and out. So how heavy is your 43-inch screen? Is it something that pretty much anyone can move?
Pretty much. So right now we have the 32-inch Go digital menu. It weighs about 35 pounds, all in all, which I'm not going to say is the light. It's not as light as a piece of paper, but in the digital signage world, that's a paperweight, right? That's almost nothing. And we ergonomically, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in the food truck world, you're lifting 50-pound boxes of potatoes and 70-pound propane tanks quite often. So, like, within that context, it's not particularly heavy either.
It's not too bad at all. And we have handles that are meant to be easy to mount. It's easier to carry around. We put a hard case around it, not because it needs to be babied, but for the convenience of transporting it, because you're running a mobile business. You want to store it, you want to keep it in something, and then it's there. So all in all, it's not that heavy, even though it's heavy duty. It will withstand quite a bit. We tell people that we put a cover lens in front of that RLCD. It'll take a blender. You'll break your hand before you break that glass. There's metal around it, all around the rest of the display. And all of our demo users have responded very high scores on the durability in terms of this. Because we tell people, if you're going to borrow it, go ahead, use it like you would. Don't baby it. Obviously, don't throw it in the lake, but go ahead and use it like you would use it for your normal service, or how you want it to be used. And then we'll reverse engineer any solutions we need to. So we've had very high scores there. We also take feedback if people want thinner or not. We want to hear everything so that we can design correctly. We want people to have options when it comes to this kind of thing. So it's definitely there. So the other part I did want to bring up, because it's our number one question that we get asked all the time. I do have one
question, so I'm curious if this will be it. But yeah, tell me.
How does it work at night or without light?
Exactly.
That's it, right? What do I know? Because we answer, you talk about repetitive questions. We answer quite a bit.
You nailed it.
So answering the RLCD part, which I really don't want to diminish. There's a ton of engineering that went into that solution where we just say, it just now reflects light, because a lot of those prototypes didn't work. It's like Edison and the light bulb. Well, immediately people ask, how does it work with no light? If you deprive it, the only thing it's dependent on. So then we went and developed and patented our proprietary front light system. So we can integrate a light. The source comes from the front and it reflects the light to you. So not every option worked, and especially not for large format, because we have so much more real estate to light up.
Yeah, it reminds me of like when I was a kid, I had a Game Boy, and there's this like light you could slide it in front of it with a magnifying glass. So you could play it at night. That's essentially a rudimentary version of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. Was it a Game Boy Advance?
No, it was like the old original
the old school Game Boy. Oh, I remember. I know what you're talking about.
Yes. And it's like you slide it. I like slid into a seam on the top of the device, and then it had this like thing that folded out and it doubled the size of the screen through a magnifying glass. Not unlike
remember that. Yes,
like a little light, ran on batteries, but that's essentially the same problem solving that you're talking
exactly.
about. Yeah.
So the things we used to have to do, right? The Game Boy Advance is actually an RL. That product has an RLCD in it, but ours is much bigger. So we solved it. We went back to the engineers and said, "Okay, you solved a great problem. Here's another one," and we did it. So what does that mean? That means that in a bright environment, if you're in the middle of the day and it's bright, you don't need a light source. In fact, don't even shade our display. Let the sun hit it. But if you have a nighttime engagement, we have a light source that can turn on that is still relatively low power, because you don't need the full brightness of the middle of the day, and your display will still be fully visible. It hits both the low power consumption and the visibility solution that we're always looking for.
Sure.
It also helps augment whatever supplemental light comes in. So we call these low light environment or transient light, where you have dawn and dusk and the light becomes variable. Our front light offers a baseline consistency. So if there is a decent amount coming in, it'll use that. It'll also use the front light, and it'll come to your viewer.
So it kind of turns on automatically almost? Is that what you're saying? Like as it gets to twilight, or
right.
That's nice.
That's exactly when you hit a certain light threshold, it will turn on.
I was thinking, like, imagine myself having this as a tool and working a long shift, and it's gone from like bright afternoon to dark, and I've completely forgotten that I need to turn it on, and no one says anything, but it takes care of itself. It's essentially what
that's a big part of it.
Yeah, so that's very valuable too.
You kind of find this funny is we actually had to, with our solution, and this is true for other things, we had to have the inverse function for the software, because generally when it gets darker, your phone or your device will turn the brightness down to conserve the battery. We're the opposite. We're like, nope, we need it. If in the bright sunlight, turn the light off and then turn it on when it gets darker. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then you did mention, because you said the 32 inches, 35 pounds, and there is a larger one, right? Like a screen as well. How much?
We manufacture a 43 inch. We haven't released that as a food truck digital menu yet, but we do have that as outdoor signage.
Okay.
So I'd have to see what.
Oh, no problem. I didn't realize.
Oh, that's okay. What we're finding is, 32 inches was a really good sweet spot for food truck owners, because the variability of your trailer or your truck, let alone because we're adding digital signage often to trucks that have already been built and, more importantly, wrapped. Right. People didn't want to cover up their logo or some other important item on the only part of their truck that wasn't for food service.
Yeah.
So
customer can what's on the screen. That's what matters in the end. And one other question, I thought of just saying that. So if you have a larger menu, which I don't necessarily recommend for a food truck, but just say you do, and the 32-inch screen, you're finding it limiting for size, it's pretty easy to like have it flash between different screens, I assume too, right? That could all be done through PowerPoint, as you were saying earlier, if you wanted to have it that way. Because I do see some outdoor signages, especially like on billboards on like the sides of the road, they'll toggle between different ads, and I don't know whether it's 15 or 20 seconds that you have one view, but you could potentially do that. Or if you really wanted to, you could get two different screens and have them on different sides of your truck to increase visibility if your line is long, which would be more sales for you guys. But I don't know if anyone actually does that, but certainly in a fast food.
Oh, they do.
Multiple.
And we would. Oh, I'm sorry. We would advocate that you should. I'd actually default to Aubrey, our marketing expert, to kind of talk about the importance of dynamic content on digital signage. Yeah. We touched on it in my talk, but Aubrey, if you want to talk about the importance of that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
She can speak to it better than I can.
I don't know if you want to mute your volume.
There you go.
All right, let's see. We're in the same room, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually with the digital menus, the best that I've seen is if you can utilize your menu to kind of like feature an item, one or a selection of items. Like, so let's say you have a taco menu, you can have one slide or one part of the video that shows, the taco contents. Like, do you want El Pastor, steak, like all the different things. And then then it flashes to your sides. Then it flashes to your drink options. And, maybe there could also be part of your menu that is stationary, and then another part of it that is constantly changing, and it's showing really beautiful, colorful, detailed videos of, close-ups of the savory taco filling that, like, or it tells a story. You could have, your story being shared with people.
Best practices. So yeah, I see that kind of application a lot, but as a consumer, sometimes I do get frustrated if it toggles too quickly because I'm like reading something and then it goes away and I have no control over that and I wasn't done reading. But overall, you would say that from your experience with marketing, it's a good practice to change it over and not just
that's ultimately, I mean, static images are great for the purpose of, like, if you want to see all of the content, but the movement is what digital has to offer over a static sign. Because you could just, if you're going to just put basically a menu up and leave it there, then why not just print one, or like, then, yeah. So this gives you just so much more dynamic content, the ability to change it, the ability to draw people in with movement. Flashy graphics are extremely eye-catching. So.
And then, do you have clients that have purchased multiple screens for the same food truck just because they want to have, something maybe towards the front, even if it says the same thing, just when there are a lot of people, it's easier to read, or maybe they have one specifically for animations, like you were talking about, and one for a QR code, but.
Well, when you were asking about the different sizes, what I would say is, rather than having a single screen that's larger, we have had users who want 32 inches, and they will purpose that a little bit differently based on what content they want to show. Some people are trying to sell advertising. Others want to have more static content than others. So we have had different use cases. We also are developing an A-frame style type of portable display that could sit next to the food truck and work in tandem with your digital menu. That one would be like on rollers or casters and have a battery option. So we are looking at people who want multiple signage options. But fundamentally, to your first question, dynamic content is what people have shown to remember. In my talk, I said it has an 83% recall rate for users. And even in that talk, people could not necessarily recall the price of a cinnamon roll or a coffee item, but they could remember small details that seemed insignificant only because they were moving. And so it's a very interesting psychological aspect of digital signage that business owners should be using, not to necessarily fool or misrepresent anything, but to provide content to their customers in a way that the customer wants to remember it. If you're worried about a number that's going to leave you, there's a way to animate it so that it's easier to remember. That's just how our biology works. Similarly with digital signage versus a static sign, anything moving will grab your attention much more quickly than a static item would. So having dynamic content in general will grab somebody's eyes and attention who is just passing by your business. Well, that's a lot of people in a food truck environment. You had touched on it in the beginning when you were saying, I want more people to notice my truck. Dynamic content, which is what digital signage offers, is absolutely that first impression. You've probably been in a lot of situations. I use this too with the different senses. You can hear the busy event going on. You can hear the food trucks working. That's fine. You can smell. A lot of people, everybody knows the smell of funnel cake if you've been to a carnival. That has an impact on your decision. But the only thing that adds directionality in a really fine-tuned sense is your vision. You
Sure.
can immediately locate it. You can do it with your hearing, but it's not as easy. So dynamic content offers that first impression. And then when you do have people in line, we also talk about the kind of the psychology of lines. The person who's ordering is happy. The person who's next is just happy to be next. You want to be speaking to number 3 through whoever's in that line. Because, and how you do that is you entertain them, you give them something to look at, you give them a brand to fall in love with, to trust, you give them a food item in the visual form that Aubrey was talking about, whether you show how you make it or you just show the picture. We all know the value of pictures on menus.
Right.
And you can even entertain them with trivia questions or jokes so that it makes that experience about waiting for your food. I say you want to turn people from waiting for your food to people wanting your food right away.
Yeah, that's a good tagline.
And that's what the digital signage can do in that time
the
frame.
possibility of like games and stuff I had not thought about, but like I think any successful food truck knows the feeling of having a line 50 people deep at a very busy event, and that's great because, like to your point, people want your food, right? No one's forcing them to stay in line.
Well, you're right.
Make that wait a better experience. They're going to like you even more. And
at some point, where you have people in line who have one of our 3 fundamental basic needs: food, water, love. Right? When you get hungry, and the hungrier we get, the more we're going to do things to go find that food. I joke that, if I'm hungry and it becomes later at night, I start to lower my standards for the things I will eat because I'm really hungry. So it's not necessarily that you make bad food, but if they're number 50 in line, if you can distract that part of their brain that's telling them, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, you will have more engagement for people waiting to get your food. You're purposing that hunger into, ooh, I really want that menu item. Because otherwise you're going to get people who will leave your line for a shorter line. And, I know when the food, as long as you're ordering from a food truck, that's probably a good thing, but you still need people coming to yours.
And even if you're a very fast operator, when that line is dozens of people long, if you're serving everyone every 30 seconds and you've got 40 people in line, that back person's still waiting 20 minutes. So it is what it is at a certain point, but that A-frame technology is really intriguing because when the lines get long, people can't necessarily see up close to your truck, but you could plant that like halfway back and there'd be something interesting where people would just be like, oh, what is that? Like, when is it going to be my turn to see what's playing? And maybe it's a game, maybe it's a movie on some food production, but that's a really potential engagement game changer, I think, for people in the back of the line specifically.
And that's where the creativity of digital signage and dynamic content really come into play. It is, when I said earlier, it's as scalable as the owner or the business owner can make it. It really is true. If you want to think creatively about incorporating these things, it is right there with you. It is super functional. A lot of times it's not as difficult. I think you said that too. It's not as difficult as you might think. But if you do it, it makes a difference. Similarly to our solution of what sounds like a small little thing of taking out a backlight and making it reflective and all of the implications that happen, people will notice that if they start to do one little thing, add a digital signage or a digital menu to their business, all of a sudden, your ROI could improve 30, 40, 50% really quickly. There's a lot of little changes that make big impacts with this type of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that covers everything. You guys don't have to talk about your pricing, but if you want to, I'm going to give you the opportunity to, for whoever might be watching that. I realize it might change, so I understand if you don't want to or speak in generalities. That's totally up to you. And then anything else you'd like to say? And when I email you,
we're very happy to talk about our pricing because I think that we are very affordable for the technology that we offer. Right now, our 32-inch off the shelf, all things included, is $29.75, which is very, very competitive with other types of what I'll call outdoor TV setups that offer similar but reduced functionality to what we offer. Additionally, and I would speak straight to a food truck owner or business owner about this. There are 2 types of costs, well, actually 3 costs that you should pay attention to, but 2 are important. Cost to acquire, cost to operate, cost to replace. Because cost to replace is type of, cost to acquire. What we have tried to do is keep our cost to acquire as competitive as possible, because we know that our costs to operate and our costs to replace are almost zero.
Mm.
If it costs you $3,000 for an outdoor TV setup that burns out after 2 years,
Right.
you're going to spend another $3,000 in 2 years, where you're not going to spend it for hours. So it may be the same upfront costs, but then you're running it. The other thing is energy costs money. If you have a gas operated generator and you have a 150 watt system, a display, versus one that's 25 watts, that's 6 times greater of your money that you're spending to operate.
Great point.
Those things add up. They really, really do. The same way that different people at the Food Truck Expo were talking about, make sure you have your 6-ounce scoop and your 4-ounce scoop, and you train your employees how to portion this out, because every 2 ounces costs money. We're in a similar boat here. And we want to make sure that this is a really important acquisition. We are passionate about helping the food truck industry acquire digital signage options in general. So we're doing everything we can to not only have multiple products soon, but also make this as affordable for businesses as we can up front. There's so much more that we can do with this, but we really are so encouraged by people who want to have digital signage to begin with, and we'll deal with the rest as we go.
And how long have you guys been doing it for food trucks specifically and the company in general?
Actually, we just launched over a year ago. This is not necessarily something that's been around for 10 years.
Yeah, it makes me feel better about my decisions in 2015. I wish I had known you were there, but you weren't there, in fact. So maybe
there you go. As a brand, we've been around for about 5 years now. Our LCDs have been around longer,
you mentioned
but
LCDs,
not large format. It took a minute to get to where we were with that. And we spent the better part of 18 months to 24 months introducing the product, talking to food truck owners, vetting the application. We want to make sure that it is one of those, it makes sense to do it, even though we may think it. So we spent that time designing that product so that when we launched it, we could accurately say this is meant for you.
Yeah, I mean,
we're in that process.
I don't know if I'll ever have a food truck again, but if I do, I would absolutely be interested in getting one.
You can buy a digital sign and just show videos of food trucks on it.
It sounds like
walk you down memory lane.
That I wanted and envisioned and saw the potential of 10 years ago has arrived in your product, which is really exciting. So thanks for the work you do. And again, your time, I really appreciate it.